Right. Oh, no, that's the wrong one to be sharing. There we go.
I feel like a right doing this, but here we go.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. And I wasn't supposed to be here, but I am. So, it's really, really lovely to see you all this morning. I hope you're all doing like absolutely wicked. First things to say is to absolutely say a massive thank you to my good friend James. He was supposed to be here today, but gosh bless him, I just got like the most panic call ever, where he was just like, you know, I can't get in. So here I am. And the nice thing is that little baby Annie is sat over in the lounge over there sleeping. So we're all good. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's absolutely wicked to have you here, and it's actually quite nice to have a bit of normality as well after a bit of a crazy week. Today, I've got a big ask for you guys, which is to go absolutely mental within the chat feature today. You guys have been on form the past few weeks with the chat feature, and it adds such a special dimension to these events. So my one ask is to use the chat feature, look after each other throughout the duration of today's session. Don't forget to switch your chat messages over to all panelists and attendees as well, because that will mean that everyone can see your chat messages, not just Annabelle and I. And speaking of Annabelle, I'm delighted that our guest today is the wonderful Annabelle Venner, someone who comes with a wealth of warmth and determination to help others, and just like an outstanding new friend, really. To give a brief bio, Annabelle joined the specialist insurer Hiscox back in 2009 to head up the marketing in the UK, before taking on the newly created global brand director role in 2012 to help drive up growth in key international markets. Prior to joining Hiscox, she spent 9 years at Coca-Cola, where she also managed the My Coke reward scheme. Annabelle's one of those people whose achievements just speak for themselves. She's a fellow of the Marketing Society, and her work at Hiscox was also shortlisted for their annual Brand of the Year award alongside John Lewis and British Airways. So that kind of gives you an appreciation for the level that we're speaking at today. When doing my research about Annabelle, one of the things that I thought sort of really resonated was one of the reasons she attributed her success is on a financial outlook for marketers. And it's something that she's realized has been an important part of driving her career forward. And yeah, it just sums her up in such a lovely way. I really loved all of our conversations today, and I know that you all have had today too. Today's session is all about research in marketing, which, as I've said in the emails, is something I think is vastly underrated. But having heard Annabelle speak at the Humans Can First Summit a little while ago, the thing that really struck me was that here was someone who was taking research and applying it in a really thoughtful way to create a marketing campaign that really mattered, that created results in a way that was sort of beyond anything that could be done just off the cuff. So we're going to learn about that today, which I'm really, really excited for. And it's something that I don't do enough of either. So I'm going to be sat here as the student as well. Finally, before we get going today, I just want to thank the sponsors, all of whom have been unbelievable. I'm going to do this a little bit more off the cuff than usual, but I want to say thank you to Content Cal, Fiverr, Redgate, Cambridge Marketing College, Lido, Brand, Further, Third Light, and Human. My one ask is that you please do take the time to thank them as well, because without them, we wouldn't be able to bring these sessions to you. And I can see there's already well over 400 people here today. So like, we're running like a decent sized conference sort of event every week now. And without these sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do that. So if 400 people were to go and thank them today, like we'd be able to run the marketing meetup for the rest of the time with no problems at all. So that's my introduction done. So Annabelle, it's over to you. And thank you so much for being here today as well.
That's all right. And thank you, Joe. And well done. I know there's loads and loads of congratulations coming in on being a dad. So that's brilliant. And quick message out to James. I got lots of desperate messages from him. And we discovered, I think yesterday, we're fellow Labrador owners. So we were going to swap Labrador in the snow pictures, but clearly not.
That's so sweet. I've got my Labradoodle sat behind me, so hopefully I'll do as an adequate replacement.
I think there's a few dog lovers out there. So I'm based in London, so I'm currently looking out the window into the lovely snow, and I think it's going to be a very, very snowy week for everyone. And I see lots of other people have got snow, which is great for dogs, I think. So that's fantastic. So thank you for the introduction. Just a quick one, just to follow up on that. So I left Hiscox last year, and I'm currently doing what may be grandly called a portfolio career. So I'm doing a little bit of sort of marketing consultancy. I'm trying to secure some non-exec director roles because I really like the strategy side of what I've done before. And then I'm doing a bit of what I call giving back, which is how I got involved with Joe. So I'm trying to support those people in early careers, whether they're in marketing or not. I'm doing some mentoring via the Marketing Academy. And I think mentoring is really important. So quick shout out to those people. If you're offered some mentorship, go for it. It's really important. And I love doing it. And I think you can learn as much from those people that you're mentoring as supporting them. So that's fantastic. And I'm just going to take you through probably a quick 20-25 minute presentation in terms of using marketing. Please ask questions. I'm really happy to be asked anything. It might not necessarily be on what I'm going to show you, but I'm very happy to take any questions or anything, or if you want, you can follow up with me afterwards. So hopefully this is going to work now. There we go. Right. So I'm just going to quickly talk to you just about research, and I'm going to very much focus a lot on research that I've used during my marketing career as well. So from my point of view, a lot of research that I've used before, the ultimate goal of it, bar really, really understanding who your customers are, has been to develop distinctive and effective marketing. This ad here is one that I probably did at Hiscox, probably in my second or third year there. And actually, we spent a lot of time umming and ahhing whether we were going to run this, because we thought and I'll come to it later, was whether it was on brand or not for us. But actually, we did run this, and this was one of the probably most distinctive and effective campaigns that we did. And a lot of the work that we then went on to run stemmed from this particular ad. So I've sort of mentioned this, which is you really, really, really need to understand your audience. Whatever research you're doing, whether it's research with, to develop communication, research to develop any innovation, whether that's innovation in products or services, you really need to understand your audience. You can't go and develop on anything unless you have gone out and you have talked to your potential customers. So you have to do a lot of work to really identify who they are. So often we do a lot of segmentation work, and we've done segmentation and we've done it demographically, which is almost quite a sort of old-fashioned way of doing it. So, you know, their age, where they live, their income, but also what's been more important is attitudinally. So I've done a lot of work in terms of really understanding what their attitude is to insurance. Some people feel it's a necessary evil. Some people thought it was something that they really needed to have. Some people felt very uncomfortable buying it direct. Some wanted to buy it via a broker. So really start off by trying to segment your target audience, both demographically and attitudinally. And also, don't be afraid about the size of your budget. So whether you've got multi-million-pound research budget, which is probably what I had at Coke. Coke put a huge amount of focus and effort into their research, and they had a massive team there who undertook all the research, and probably we spent a couple of £1 million every year, at least just in the UK. When I went to Hiscox, I think the starting budget we had there was probably a couple of 100,000. But you can also work off a budget that are a lot smaller than that, because you can do a lot of this research that I'm going to talk you through yourself. So don't shy away from having a really big budget. So one of the things you can do, which is either accompanied or mystery shopping. So when going back to my sort of time at Coca-Cola, we often got paired up with somebody, and we would go shopping with them, and we would either go and they would do their weekly shop in Tesco, or it might be that they were just popping around to the corner shop to buy a few things. You can go with them. It's very, very easy to set up, and you can, as they go shopping, you can observe them and see, are they buying off their list, or are they just buying whatever takes their fancy in the store? And a lot of that you'll find will be driven by whether they've got kids or not. So just to bring this to life for you, I love Ocado, and I normally get my weekly Ocado order. I thought it was coming tomorrow, but I realised that I'd messed up this week, and it's not coming to next week. So I decided to go shopping yesterday and took my 13-year-old with me. And I probably spent 20 or 25% more than I was planning, because all these things just appeared in my trolley. So that just shows sort of a little bit of insight into people who are shopping. The second one is sort of mystery shopping. So bring this to life to you. When we had at Hiscox, we had a small business in Asia, and it sold motor insurance. And we really wanted to get an understanding of what our purchase journey was like compared to our competitors. So rather than spending a lot of money on briefing this out to an agency to run for us, we just got some of our guys who were less busy to go and buy policies from our website and also from our competitors, and also to phone them up as well. So you can get a really, really good idea of what it's like and what those pain points might be. And this will be completely free if you do it yourself. Another one is ethnographic research. So this is really about observing behaviours and just seeing what people are doing. And there's a couple of ways that I've done this. And I was chatting to a very good friend of mine who I worked with at Hiscox and at Coca-Cola, and she gave me an example of what she did. So she actually was working in the US, and I think she was working for an advertising agency as a planner. And they really, really wanted to understand how people waxed their cars. So how they cleaned and waxed them. And literally, she said she went along to one street and she sat down, I think probably on a bucket or something, and she watched people cleaning their cars. And she said she learned a lot from that. And then she then went along to a supermarket and bought, I think, 3 or 4 different brands of car wax and tried it out herself. So again, really simple, really easy, something you can do. And the thing that we did at Hiscox is a lot of our customers there were small business owners. And we wanted to really get an understanding of what it was like for them in their day-to-day life. So what did they do when they were in the office? So we just asked some of them if they wouldn't mind some of our team going in and sitting and observing them. Now, it must have been a little bit weird, but a lot of the marketing team went in and sort of spent an hour or two in the office, just sat quietly and just observed what they did, how much time were they on the computer, how much time they were on the phones, and you can learn a lot from doing that. So roundtables. So this is really easy if you yourself are a good facilitator, or if you've got people within the business who are very good at sort of moderating discussions. Now, we do this a lot with our brokers. So at Hiscox, we sell a lot of our policies via brokers. And actually, they're a really interesting audience who don't get asked to participate in research very much at all. So we invite them in to the office, obviously when we were office-based, and asked them to come in. We told them what we wanted to talk to them about. And often we sort of rewarded them rather than giving them, I don't know, £100 or £200, which is sometimes what panelists get given. We would give them a sort of branded umbrella thing at the end of it. But what they really liked was feeling important and feeling as if their views were being heard. And we would often invite probably 6 of them to come in, either during the day or in the early evening. And we would ask them a number of questions, and probably the sessions would be about an hour and a half. So this is just a very, very easy thing for you to do. And you just, as I said, you need to be comfortable enough to have somebody who can moderate the conversation that's going on in the room. So another one here is, I've called this pop-up online communities, and I'll explain why. So if you have an online community and you do this with your customers, or some of them could be non-customers, effectively it can take quite a lot of effort to feed them. And I'll explain that, which is often you need to be sending out or giving them work to look at, or giving them ideas, or asking them to feed back on stuff, or sending them emails. And therefore, if you don't send them anything or don't engage them, they'll get bored and they'll disappear. But a pop-up online community can be something that you run for a week. And where they can be really good is if you want to evolve the idea. So if you've got a really, really small idea and it's not fully fledged, and you don't think it's good enough at the moment to be able to put in, say, a bigger quant or core study, you can have this pop-up online community, and you can ask them all to feedback on an idea. You take their feedback live because you can be able to interact with them. And then overnight, you can evolve it. And then they can look at it, the next evolution of it the next day. So this is a really, really good way of getting feedback from your target customers as you develop an idea with them, rather than potentially burning a lot of cash by doing it with an agency and paying them to do all the work for you. And the other thing is what I've said, or even just talk to your customers. So I know this can be sometimes a bit of a challenge with GDPR, but actually at Hiscox, we had a very small percentage of our customers who we just asked them if they would be up for being contacted and just giving us feedback occasionally. And it could be anything from, we're thinking about this new idea, would you use it? Or it could be, what's your biggest frustration that you've got at the moment? And actually, last year, in the height of COVID, we did email our customers twice because we just really, really wanted to understand the challenges you face. Sometimes you're really, really close to it in an organization, and you sometimes try and second guess what your customers are thinking or feeling. But it's really, really inexpensive just to be able to, on the odd occasion, to go out there and email them and ask for their view on it. And if you keep it really short and sweet, so often we might have only asked sort of 2 or 3 questions, it's a really good way of getting feedback from your customers. The other thing I want to talk about is called semiotics. So this is a sort of more academic way of decoding all the elements of your communication. And it sort of looks at how your comms might be communicating to people. So for those of you that know the Hiscox advertising, it's quite, we predominantly use red and black. And so when you ask semioticians to decode that, what they will say is it come across as being very confident and very bold. But it also could be sort of quite angry if you think of all the red in it and things. So there were some negatives there as well. in terms of some of the ways it was coming across. And I think for some people it was quite alienating. And I think women often had a stronger reaction to that. So when we heard all of this, we then evolved the advertising. So to begin with, when we launched it, we had a very simple background color. And so what we tried to do was soften it by using different tones, and also then by bringing in some images that added that warmth to it. This you probably can't do yourself, and you'll need to go and find a semiotician to do it. But it's quite an interesting way to look at your communication, and often adds a different angle to it. So once you've done all of that, so you can do as little or as much research. Now, I wouldn't have used all of those every time. Often it might have been one or two different things, but then you have got an absolute raft of information on your customers. And it's a really, really key job now is to find all those insights. Now, I know that many of you were probably, an insight can be quite a hard thing to discover. And often people talk about it as being that sort of aha moment. But you really need to find those one or two core insights amongst all that information you got, because that will be really critical when you go to the next step and when you write a creative brief for your agencies. So it's really worth spending the time on this. So now we go, a lot of what I'm talking about today is to build amazing campaigns and amazing work rather than developing sort of new innovation. So if we go back now to focus on great campaigns, this is really, really, really critical. And I must admit, in my past, I have not spent enough time on doing this, but I've delivered quite a lot of marketing training at Hiscox. So we ended up delivering it ourselves for various markets rather than using an agency. And we stress this so much, which is we had a one-page brief template. And we asked everybody to compile everything the agency needed to know onto one page. So they really, really had to think about what they wanted that agency to know, and really invest the time in doing it. I think the cartoon at the bottom is fantastic, because I have seen this too many times in my career, where people have taken an old brief, maybe from the previous year, and just sort of translated 90% of it and probably changed things like a bit of market information. But it's really, really important that you spend the time on this. I would also then say, once you've briefed this into the agency, they will then create their own creative brief before they give it to their creative teams. And I would strongly suggest that you ask the agency that you sign off on their internal brief, because you need to be really, really confident that they have understood what your brief is. So please spend time on this and get your teams to spend time on this. There are lots of brief templates out there. But if anybody is interested, I'm very happy to share the one that I've used at Hiscox. As I said, it's all on one page. And we just stress with the teams that they just need to spend the time to complete it. So you have briefed in the work. You need to now give your agency time, please, to respond. There is no point giving them a brief and saying, we want to hear back in 2 days. Depending on the scale of the work that we were doing, we would give the agency anything from 2 to 4 weeks. But we would agree that with the agency. So we would say, ideally we want you to respond in 2 weeks' time. Is that enough time for you? So you just need to get the buy-in from everybody on this one. In terms of how you give feedback, it won't make or break your work, but it is really important, and it can be so demoralizing to your creative agencies if you get it wrong. And if instead of focusing on the bigger idea and how the work makes you feel, you go straight into the minutiae of the detail. And you can look at some of these and you can look at them and laugh, but I have seen this happen in too many times where people have gone, I don't like that color, or that image doesn't work, or I got hated by one of my agencies when I was at Coca-Cola, when it was, can you make the logo bigger? I'm assuming that might be on here, but that is quite a common one. So before you get into the minutiae of the detail, what I'm going to do is just take you through 2 tools here that you can possibly use. Okay, so there, hopefully I'm going to test myself that I can remember these. So one is guide and one is disco. And so what you need to do, the first thing you need to do when you give feedback to the agency is think about the bigger strategic, bigger idea that you're trying to do before you get into the detail. So guide, right. G is for gut. So when you see the work, how does it make you feel instinctively? What emotional feeling you get, because that's how your customers are going to respond to the work. You know, the customers won't sit there and diagnose your ad idea. So what is your initial reaction to it? The second bit is, do you understand what it's trying to communicate? So do you get the message, do you get the story, whether it's a TV ad or a press ad or a radio ad? The next one is, is the insight that you put on the brief coming out in this? So is it responding to the brief you said? Does it deliver on the brief? And from that perspective, we often have brand houses, brand arrows, I can't remember what the rest of it, brand onions, there are a lot of these, but is it on brand? Is the work on brand? And then do you think also that it is going to engage people? So if anybody, there's a gentleman called Dave Trott, who is fantastic, who I cannot remember which advertising agency he worked at, but if go and look, I'm sure there's videos of him talking on YouTube. And he said, your work needs to cut through and engage, because there's no point even looking at what messages it's communicating if it's not really engaging and cutting through. Oh, it's good that I see some people know of him. So please go and have a look at what he's doing. So once you've got the feeling of, is this idea working? Is it going to cut through? Then you can go down a level, and then you can go into a bit of the execution. So first one is distinctive. So is it going to differentiate? We had this expression at Hiscox called in it, but not of it. So we were insurance. So we needed to, the advertising that we were doing needed to communicate we were insurance, but we wanted to be different. We didn't want to be same advertising as everybody else in the category. So we had this expression which was in it, but not of it. The second one is, what's the idea and does it link back to your strategy? S is for single-minded. So you really, really, really only want to be communicating one thing. You shouldn't be asking your advertising agency to communicate 3 or 4 different messages. Then you've got to think about, so don't forget we're on executions here. Think about the context. So where are you going to run this ad? So we had a ton of debate at Hiscox on outdoor. Now we would do roadside outdoor, tube outdoor, cross tracks on trains outdoor. And it was really, really important to think about where that ad was going to be shown, because if it was roadside, cars are going fast, cars are driving past the ad really, really quickly. They're probably not going to see more than 6 words. So there's no point having all this copy supporting proof points at the bottom of the ads, because nobody's going to see them. But if you think about, if you've got a cross track when you're waiting for the train, you can probably have more copy, and a press ad can have more copy. So really think about the context of where the ad is going to be and how it's going to work. The next one is around, is it another C? Is it really, really clear in its communication? And then the O is on brand. So these are 2 really clear mnemonics that you can use when you're judging work. And I think if many of you probably here are agency side, it's probably worth having the conversation with your clients to say, when you're giving feedback, can you focus on that bigger communication idea strategy piece before you get into whether the executions are working, whether the logo is big enough, whether the color's right, whether they like that picture of the dog, and whether it should be a poodle rather than a Labrador. So just really think about it. The next one then is around setting really clear performance indicators for the work and then share them. So I got this wrong when I was at Hiscox. So I was developing a TV ad for Hiscox, and I had clearly communicated it to, I had thought to the business that this ad was all about driving brand affinity and that it wasn't going to drive sales. So the way we were judging and evaluating the ad was, would it shift a bit of awareness and would it shift brand affinity amongst our target customers? It hit all of those in test. We put it on air. And then a couple of weeks or 2 or 3 weeks after it had been on air, I got all these emails saying, why are we not seeing an uplift in people calling our contact center? Why are we not selling more product? And I said, because that's not what the ad was designed to do. So be really, really clear in terms of what the ad is going to do. And then be really clear in terms of what does the ad need to achieve before you run it. So we set ourselves quite ambitious goals that we wanted to achieve. So traditionally, financial services advertising doesn't score as well as sort of FMCG advertising, but we set ourselves a bar that we wanted to be, I think it was in the top third scoring TV ads across all sectors. And then we would set ourselves benchmarks for how well they took out what brand it was and how well it would drive action off the back of it. So we wanted advertising that would make people want to find out more. So again, before you go into the development process, set and agree what those action standards are and involve your agencies on this, please, because they need to have skin in the game and they need to know what the work needs to deliver. So you've got some great advertising and now you can go and evaluate it. Now, obviously pre-COVID, probably I would have done what I would have called traditional qual and traditional quant. But actually what's quite interesting is the impact that COVID's had, but actually it means that you can do quite different advertising, but it can generate some amazing results. So rather than getting consumers in a room and sit behind a mirror and listen to what they say, all research now is being delivered online. And the image in the middle is you can now get people to watch your ad and you can do facial coding. So you can see how they are responding to the ad. So are they confused? Are they engaged? Are they bored? Are they frustrated? And actually, this can be better than doing sort of more traditional focus groups, because actually you can see actual behavior and actually how people are responding to the ad rather than what they claim that they will do. So I think post-COVID, I think you'll find a lot of people will change the way they evaluate ads before they go on air. And then the one on the right-hand side is just, obviously, you can also do eye tracking. So you can see what people are looking at. And this can be a great tool because you can see where people are focused. Are they looking at your copy? Are they looking at your product? And then you can adapt your ad based on these results. And this will do things like increase brand takeout, which is really important because you want people to remember that it's an ad for your brand and not an ad for one of your competitor brands. So I just think there's some couple of tools that have become more and more predominant with people using them rather than defaulting to the traditional focus and then quant research. I, both at Coca-Cola and at Hiscox, we would always do quant pre-testing before we put an ad on air. I know a lot of people don't have budgets to do that, but we always wanted to do that. And then you sometimes have a bit of a challenge that you're testing a finished film and it can then be expensive to make changes to it, but probably not as expensive of putting an ad campaign out there and spending a couple of £1 million behind it and it not delivering what you wanted it to do. So this is just, I'm getting to the end of this now, and this is just the sort of, you need to measure the impact of your work and also then learn from it. So this goes back to sort of the bit about setting clear action standards and clear KPIs in terms of what you want this ad to achieve. I actually judge quite a lot of awards. So I think I judged the Direct Marketing Association's awards last year. I keep forgetting what month we're in. And also I've judged some more Asia awards as well. And it's really, really important that you measure the right things. So, and go back to why you were making the ad in the first place. So once you've tracked it, you can then, if it's not scoring what you want, you then need to try and investigate why and try and course correct if you possibly can. or build the learnings into any further ad development that you do. But it's just really, really important that you do this. I think too many people put ads out there and then don't track what they're doing. It doesn't matter if it hasn't worked as well as you want. Well, it does matter, because obviously you probably spent a lot of money on it. But the key thing is that you track and you measure it, and then you learn from it. And then when you go and develop further campaigns, you can probably make it even better the next time around. And these are just a couple of things around what I think has been driven by COVID. And I don't think these are bad things. I think these are probably good things. So the first one is, I think, faster results. So I think because you're not having to set up things like focus groups where you have to recruit in and then make certain people come up and come in the evening, agencies can turn around ad testing and really quick now, and probably without compromising quality by using some of the techniques I've spoken about. I think you can be a lot more agile. There's ways of doing testing work, doing it online, using some of these pop-up communities, making changes, going back in again. So often you could potentially start with a few ideas at the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, you've got one that is really strong and testing really well and your customers are loving. And I think another thing that's probably driven is more collaborative working. Part of this is probably by the fact that you know, the creative agencies, the research agencies and the clients are all getting to know each other better. They're getting to see a different side of you because you're working from home. But I just think there's quite a bit of speed here. And I think people have just become more collaborative and are working together to solve big challenges. So I think that there has been a lot of change in the research people have using over the past year. But I think a lot of these things are really good changes. And I think you'll see them all staying as we go forward. And people have more money and can start developing bigger and better comms campaigns for the rest of this year. There we go. Right. I'm going to stop sharing that.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Annabelle. That was really...
All right, sorry, that was a very quick whiz through, but I thought I'd leave time for lots of questions. And I'm very happy to. I think people were asking about these slides available. Yeah, they will be, so that's all fine.
That's wicked. Thank you so much. I think there's so much solid advice in there, and I know that it's really hard earned as well. The thing that struck me is that potentially if I walk through in my little marketing hat and sort of, you know, I like to think I'm a good marketer, but you know, if I go through your presentation just there's probably quite a lot of stuff where you go, yeah, you know, I sort of know that stuff, but have I done any of it? No, of course I haven't. You know, so like, just really, really solid marketing advice. And the one thing that I really hope that people actually take the time to do today is implement it. You know, you've been given the tools today, so let's actually take the time to implement it. I think your point right at the beginning there, which was about you spend so much time sort of like putting money behind these things, why wouldn't you spend time doing this? It's so important. So so thank you so much for sharing, and a bunch of lovely comments coming in as well, so hopefully you can see those in the chat feature. So we've got a bunch of open questions, so let me work through them. I'm going to sort of come at you with a bit of a scattergun approach, because we get from the top. So Judith asks, and it might be hard to pick three, but Judith asks, what would be your top 3 research tips for a small B2B company? And I guess there's a broader thing here about B2B and also small businesses that probably are a crucial part of the question.
Yeah, so I would say your customers will, people think B2B is really boring. So a lot of my Hiscox stuff was B2B. You can be really creative. And so my first one would be, don't just do really functional work for B2B audiences. They want to be emotionally engaged as well. So that's probably my first one. That's not really a research tip. The next one would be, your customers really, really want to talk to you and really would love to have some time to feedback to you. And the key thing is then finding the time to do it. So we often did breakfast meetings with them, a bit like this one. So before people get stuck into their day, doing things at sort of 8 or 8:30 in the morning is really good, because they're happy to give you that time.
Right.
Can't give a third one, but those are probably the main 2.
Nice. Okay, that's really interesting. And so there's a question that is reasonably high up here, which is about whether you rewarded people for engaging in your research at any point. Did you do that?
So people, yes. So if we used it via an agency, so if we briefed it into an agency, people would be, because I can't remember what the going rate was, but they would, you know, the agency would say you're going to need to pay them whatever it was, 100 or I can't remember what it is, £50 for their time in the evenings. When we do it with brokers, often the brokers, again, underserved audience, they don't get asked to participate. They were really happy. And often we would just give them a branded umbrella. When we, they were very happy with that. Or we would say we would give a charity donation. But if we were doing it to our own customers, no, we didn't. We just said, would they like to participate? And they were very happy to do it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And was, when you say they're happy to participate, were they sort of surprised to be asked? You know, do folks sort of?
No, I just think they were quite pleased to be asked, and they were, you know, you just have to be a bit careful, because when you do talk to your own customers, obviously you probably talk to the ones that are the most engaged with your brand, because they really want to, they've got a sense that they really want to work with you to improve it. So they're not going to be completely representative of your whole audience.
That's interesting. So how do you then go about avoiding confirmation bias? Because presumably you're
yeah, we would only use it at specific times. So for instance, if we were developing a new ad campaign, we might just use it initially with them when we had a few ideas. We wouldn't use it with our customers to say, is we going to launch it or not, or is it good enough to launch? So you just have to be quite, or we would use them to say, we're thinking about launching, you know, one of these three things, which one would you have a preference for? So it's very, very early stage research.
Okay, that's really interesting, actually, because that was one of the questions that popped into my head as you were speaking, which was there ever a time where you went against the research? You know, you actually spent the time, you're like, I really believe in this idea, so we're going to implement it anyway.
I don't think I've had those. You often hear stories of amazing campaigns that have come to light where people have gone with their gut feel, where research has told them no. I don't think I've had that at Hiscox, not that I can remember.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Cool. There was a whole sort of like swathe of questions when you mentored the mentors.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that's something that's really close to your heart. Well. Yeah, so like there's a bunch of questions about it. And the first one's from Emma here. So we're going to sort of skip between mentorship and research here. Yeah. Emma asks, it's great to hear that you do mentoring, as I found marketing very hard to get into. It's not something I did at university. How would I go about finding a marketing mentor?
Ask people. Most people are very flattered to be asked. So I did chemistry at university. Okay, I accidentally found my way into marketing, and you'll find that probably the vast majority of marketers accidentally found their way in. And so I asked for a transfer. So I worked at Smithkline Beecham at one of their factories in St Helens, and I just asked for a transfer to marketing, and 20 odd years later, I'm still doing it. I would, so if you've got a network of people that you know who are marketers, I would ask them. Most people will be really, really flattered to be asked. And often, as I said, I get a lot out of it and I benefit from it as well. If you don't have any marketers in your direct network, but you know people who do know them, you could always ask for an introduction. Or there might just be local programs that you can do. But obviously with COVID now, everybody's doing all this stuff, not face-to-face anymore. It's all done over Zoom. But you have to, if you want to have some mentoring, really think about what you want to get out of it, and you have to drive it. So I mentor a few people and I leave it up to them to drive the conversations, tell me when they want to have a discussion about something.
And what, generally speaking, are those folks looking to get out of a mentorship relationship? You know?
So a lot of it is around where they're having particular challenges with people within an organisation. So it could be that sort of, I'm trying to do this, or I don't get promoted, or people don't see the value in me, or when I, you know, some of them are, I'm really confident when I'm on my own, but when I get into a big room of other people, I get really quiet and I can't get my point across, and then people are saying I'm not going to be assertive enough. Some of it could be about just careers and where they want to go, and helping them work out, could they do a sideways move to help them get to where they want to be. So it's a whole mix of different things.
Okay. And I think mentorship and coaching, they sort of live
They're
on.
a bit different. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you view it differently? I mean, if someone was to come up to you and sort of say,
I'm not a qualified coach at all. And the way I've done mentoring tends to be, so when I did it at Hiscox, I did it with women, so with junior women, and I potentially would meet them, say, on a monthly basis, and it would be, as I said, it could be anything that they've had feedback in their end of year review and have been told that they need to do this in order for them to be successful. And then they would come to me, and often we would just sort of bounce a few ideas around, or I would tell them that person could help them to do that. Coaching is much more of a full-on, longer-term, one-on-one relationship, and I'm not a coach.
No.
Very clear on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's really, really important. I've had the benefit of getting a little bit of mentorship over this past year through a few folks, and it's amazing what you can achieve in an hour. It doesn't have to be a sort of really long conversation in that way, does it? It can be, a specific challenge, as you said, which works really well. Out of interest, have there been any sort of approaches from folks that have sort of stood out to you, when they've sort of come up to you and said, I'd love your mentorship? What were the questions that were being asked that made you think,
I think the thing to remember is you need to, before you approach somebody, just really think about what is it you need some help with, and do you know anything about that person that they could help with that? So where I've had it, where it's worked, is obviously insurance is quite a male environment. And so if somebody has wanted to have some advice in terms of they're struggling in a very dominant male environment, and they know that I've had a successful career in that. So it's almost a bit like when agencies are approaching you, or even about sponsorship, you can't just think about why you think that person can help you. And then when you approach them, or whether it's by email or whatever it is, just say, this is what I'm struggling with. You've obviously done X, Y, and Z. Therefore, could you help me with this?
I love that. That's a grace that's allowed to the mentor, right? It's a bit of thoughtful applied in their direction. I love that. Okay, heading back to research, we've got a question from Lydia, who asks, do you have any tips for new businesses who are just starting out and therefore have no current customers to ask, or exploring new sectors?
I'm just trying to think of, but hopefully you have identified who your target customers should be. And therefore, I think that you have to go out there and put some. So I would always say, when you're talking to people about what you want to do or where you want to go, you need to put something in front of them. People find it really, really hard. So if you said to somebody, tell me what you'd change in your house to make it more secure or something, it's very, very hard for them to respond. But if you put some stuff in front of them and say, well, we're thinking about doing X, Y, and Z, which one do you like? They find it much easier to respond to. So I think it's a bit like the sort of, isn't there a quote about Henry Ford, who said, if I'd asked them what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Yeah. They wouldn't have been able to envisage a car. So often you need to put some stimulus in front of them that they can respond to. So I would say go and talk to people you've identified as being your probably potential customers, and have some early ideas of what you want to do, and just see how they're responding to it.
I love it. And I guess that also feeds into your point about the brief, right? It's a very similar sort of concept, that the narrowness actually provides a broader view for folks. Yeah. So there was a question, that came right at the beginning, because you're speaking about target market, and you mentioned demographics and attitudes.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, I mean, when it comes to personas and stuff like that, is that a tool that you use, or was it a little bit different? Did you sort of compile those into personas, or
yes, we did. Yeah, and often they were and often they would end up being a mix of everything, but we did. And I think you just have to be slightly, I think personas can be useful. We found them to be most useful when we were talking about our different segments to people outside marketing. So obviously, working in insurance, we would have underwriters or claims people or operations people, and it really helps to bring it to life if you can go, I apologize, I can't remember the names of, but there would always be a segment of our customers that wanted to be, grow their business and sell it and make millions off it, and we would have a term for those. But actually, the vast majority of people just they went off and set up their own businesses because they wanted to have a better work-life balance, or they wanted to be their own boss. So they were really, really useful for that internal selling. We didn't really use them too much when we were talking to they would never appear in a brief that we would give to our advertising agency.
Interesting. No, that's really fascinating. Thank you. I know that they're considered one of those tools that, I wouldn't say controversial, but
there's lots of people have different views on them, whether they're good or not. Yeah,
sure, absolutely. So we've got a question from Sophie. Sophie asks, how would you, and it's quite specific on the tactics, but how do you go about creating a pop-up online community?
So we did that, and I apologize, I cannot remember the name of the agencies. So we didn't do that ourselves. We worked with, actually, I think they were called, Face Group. I don't know if they're still called Face Group now, but I think it's something that they specialised in. So they would set that up for us and run it. And then different people from the marketing team obviously would be there to engage with it and ask the questions, and also create some of the stimulus that went in.
Okay, that's brilliant. I think there's some tools that are coming out these days. I mean, have you ever used Google surveys or anything like that? Did you?
No, we've done. Oh, do you know? Probably.
Yeah, probably part of the mix.
We've done some work. We've done some work when we've done stuff where we've looked at, so that in Asia we did a lot of video advertising, so we would do some work there to look at those people who've been exposed to the video ads on YouTube, and those people who hadn't, and looked at uplift and stuff. So there is quite a lot you can do digitally. That's again not expensive and can be really quick to turn around.
Yeah, absolutely. That speed thing seems to be
I think speed has become more and more important, obviously, with particularly those businesses affected by COVID and where they've got customers affected. People needed to have quite fast responses so they could understand what their customers were feeling and what they needed to do to change that dialogue with them.
Yeah, that's such a great point, actually. I mean, that's a really, really important one, right? So many people speak about data, being the guiding light in marketing and stuff like that, but of course it's historical. So in fact, what you're doing here is looking into the future. You're asking. Yeah. That's a really. I think
it's quite interesting. I don't think anybody would particularly want to use the data from the past 12 months to predict what was going to happen in the future. So
no, exactly. No, I've never really thought about it like that before, but thank you. That's really, really useful. Okay, so a question from Nikki. Nikki asks, sorry, we've already done this one because it was about incentives in marketing. So folks are quite happy to help out. So Elizabeth asks, for brands with small budgets, what do you suggest we should prioritize in terms of spending our money on research, or is it best to DIY it?
So it depends what you're doing. So for me, I just think the focus initially needs to be on really understanding your customers. And I think a lot of that you can do quite inexpensively. I think if you're going to go out there and you're creating a new campaign, you probably need to spend a little bit more money on it in terms of really understanding whether it's going to resonate with those customers and drive the results you want to see, because the cost of media is still huge. So I just think it depends on at what stage you are and what if you look at, we would always do a marketing plan for the next year, and in that plan we would identify what we were trying to shift in terms of our customers. So was it around awareness? Was it that brand affinity? Was it that they knew who we were, but they didn't think we were for them or weren't going to buy? And once you've identified what area, which part of that you really, really need to focus on, that then feeds into your community. So start with, how your customers are feeling about you. What is the big thing that you need to solve for the next year? And then that out of that will say, where do you need to focus your attention and your money?
I love that. Thank you. And there's you mentioned the brand affinity thing there, and I thought that was a really interesting part of the conversation, because you said that you thought you'd sold it well, but then you still got questions back. So looking back with the benefit of hindsight and also from your experience, when it comes to selling a campaign internally based on sort of brand awareness metrics and stuff that probably sits out of non-marketers' point of interest.
Mm.
How did you go about that, and how would you do it differently this time around?
Yeah, so there are lots and lots and lots of really, really good tools that you can use out there through companies such as the IPA has a lot of stuff that it publishes, so does Walk, which talks about investing in brand, whether it's investing in brand campaigns that drive awareness and brand affinity and the long-term impact that they have, and try and pull that conversation away from we just need to put more and more money in digital. And a lot of people have been in field, have done some excellent work on. So even if you can't do, because those studies can cost hundreds of thousands to do, so just go and look at what everybody else has published and use that to continually educate your business about how marketing works. I've one of the things I did was regularly meet with our finance teams, just to continue that education of, yes, you can put money in and give Google lots of money to drive short-term sales, but actually you need to balance it off with brand work, because that will drive the most effectiveness over time.
Absolutely. And so you almost argue the logic and the evidence wider around it. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. So next one from Mysterious Anonymous. If you have lots of market research that you want to do on your website, communications, to identify unmet needs, etc., how should you decide which to prioritize? With an exclamation at the end. So
no, that's fine. So I would say, I think I sort of briefly touched on this. So what is the problem you're trying to solve? So is it that people don't know who you are? Is it that they don't know, they know who you are, but they don't think that you're the brand for them? Or is it that they just don't buy you and they go buy competitors? So start there. Try and work out what the real issue is, and then you can go, right, so that is this, for the next 6 months, this is the big strategic priority we need to solve, and then have a think about, so how are you going to go and solve it? And then out of that will fall, so what is it we don't know that we need to go and find out? If it is around awareness, you then and then you realize actually that your current work is not reaching people, or it might be you need to change your media strategy. You might not need to do any research at all. So just start with, what is that, and what is the problem with your customers that you're trying to solve?
I love that. And there's a really great question here as well, which is how would you go about making sure that you've found a real piece of insight and you're comfortable to act upon it? Presumably that leads into this, like you know the problem, so you sort of feel like,
and I think insights, I think it's often with an insight, it's a bit of a gut feel that says, that is that aha moment with it, and often it's really hard to really know whether you found a good one, because it's only then because then you're reliant on really great work coming off the back of it. But I would spend the time on working it out. It's really, you can't research an insight, you can only really research work that comes off the back of it. So you're going to probably have to go a bit with your gut feel on it.
I love it. Thank you. So that's our hour, but the last question for me is, you mentioned about the mentorship, and again, it's an important part of close to your heart. So if people were to try and get in touch at any point as part of your giving back, what would be perfect?
So if anybody, what I would ask you to do is drop me something via LinkedIn, and as I said before, if you think I can support you and help you, be really, really specific. So I did this at the Humans Come First conference, and I followed up with a lot of people, and I said to people, right, I'm really happy to do it, but tell me what is the problem you want some help on, and why you think I can do it. So that's what I would say. I won't be able to do it for everybody, but I definitely can do it with a few people, and you are going to be the ones to drive it. So I would have an initial conversation with you, and then it would be up to you to be in contact when you'd work through some of the sort of suggestions I've given you. But I'm very happy to be approached.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Annabelle. And thank you to everyone for being here today. It's been so lovely to see the chat messages coming in throughout. It's amazing to see that there's almost like there's the content being delivered, discussed, interacted with the Q&A, but then also everyone interacting with each other as well, creating that real sense of community. So thank you all so much. Thank you. Please do take the time to thank the sponsors. That's my one ask for today. This has been the first webinar that I've ever delivered in my pajamas, so that's also been a first today.
You can't tell.
But thank you all so much for being here today. Please take the time to share, to thank the sponsors, to say thank you to Annabelle, and to sign up for next week. Sure. Thank you all so much.
Everybody enjoy your snow day.
Yeah, absolutely. Take the day off.
Yeah.
Thank you, Annabelle, and
All right, no
thank you
problem.
everyone for being here.
Okay.